Chapter 7 Presentation, Strategy and Technology. Presenters are Janelle Eaton, Madison Fields, and Joe Early.
There are many different learning objectives that you will become familiar with once we review the material in this chapter. In this chapter, we will take a look at the nature of competition and strategy in high technology industries. Two terms to be familiar with are technology and high-tech industries. Technology refers to the body of scientific knowledge used in the production of goods and services. High-tech industries are those in which the underlying scientific knowledge that companies in the industry use is advancing rapidly, and by implication, so are the attributes of the products and services that result from its application. The computer industry is often thought of as the quintessential example of the high-tech technology industry. Other industries, to name a few, are telecommunications, pharmaceuticals, and aerospace. Technology is basically in every facet of our lives. Why this chapter and high-tech focus is so important. Technology is accounting for an ever larger share of economic activity. There are two types of technology industries. You have low technology areas and high technology areas. These two areas are evolving. Low is becoming one and high is expanding into other areas of business. The circle of high technology systems is both large and expanding, and technology is revolutionizing aspects of the product or production system, even in industries not considered high tech. This chapter examines the competitive features found in many high-tech industries and the kind of strategies businesses must adopt to build business models that will allow them to achieve superior profitability and growth. Next, we're going to talk about technical standards and format wars. Technical standards. This is a set of technical specification that producers adhere to when making a product or component. Format wars are battles to control the source of differentiation and thus the value that such differentiation can create for the customer. In most cases, product differentiation is based on technical standards. Often only one standard will dominate the market, like Microsoft and their operating systems for personal computers. In this slide, I've included a picture to give everybody a little bit better idea of how this works. This is a technical standard for personal computers, and it's a dominant design. It's a common sign of features or design characteristics. The Wintel standard is based on the Intel microprocessor and the Microsoft operating system, which is central to the PC. So you can see that the big blue circle is the dominant design, which holds the smaller areas. The Wintel standard, you have your USB and then your TCP/IP. Developers of software applications, component parts, and peripherals, such as printers, adhere to the standard because it guarantees that it will work well with the PC based on the Wintel standard. So as you can see, the PC is based on many technical standards. When a company owns a standard, it's a source of competitive advantage and profitability. Benefits of standards. They help reduce the associated with complementary products. Production costs can be reduced, confusion can be reduced in the minds of the consumer, and it helps to guarantee compatibility between products and their complements. The next thing we're going to talk about is network effects and positive feedback. Network effects. This is the network of complementary products as a primary determinant of the demand for an industry's product. Positive feedback. This reinforces the network effects to encourage adoption of a standard. The companies whose strategy best exploits positive feedback loops wins the format war. This is an important strategic principle in many high-tech industries, particularly computer software, telecommunications, and consumer electronics. Microsoft is where it is because of its exploited a positive feedback loop. Lockout and switching costs. Lockout occurs when the market settles on a standard and the company who are promoting an alternate standard can no longer compete. Switching costs, which we are all familiar with due to the mobile industry. This is a cost the consumer absorbs for switching from product based on one standard to a product based of another. Consumers will bear switching costs if the benefits of adopting the new technology outweigh the costs of switching. If consumers are unwilling to pay for switching costs, the company will be locked out. Unfortunately, Wintel's standard for PCs one day may be superseded if a competitor finds a way of providing sufficient benefits that enough consumers are willing to bear the switching costs associated with moving to a new operating system.
Strategies for winning a format war. In a competitive market, it's important to make sure that your network stands out from the rest. In order to do that, quick installation is a necessity. It guarantees positive feedback, lessens the impact of costs that are associated with the new network. It also allows the company to make any quick improvements they need. It keeps it front and center for customers and first-time users, and it also introduces your product as the company standard. Supply of complements. Complements are essential to help the product feel valuable and sell better than any other products in the market. And there are two steps to make sure that you have a strong set of complements. One is to make sure diversification of that complement is there. So, for example, Apple iPhone has its own apps and App Store that is specific to Apple. You cannot go out and get Apple apps without actually having an iPhone. So the second step is to create incentives for independent companies to create complements. The other example with the Apple app is that the iPhone has contracts with carriers such as AT&T and Verizon. When a new iPhone is produced, those carriers not only sell the iPhone, they sell the complements that go with that iPhone as well. Killer applications. A killer application is a use of a new technology or product that's so compelling customers adopt them in droves and it kills formats. So examples back in the 90s would have been email, chat rooms, and web browsers. In 2016 and 17, we have outlets such as social media, TV ads, and other internet resources that help get that product out there. Essentially what this does is it develops your complementary goods, and it also allows endorsements for other good complements as well. Endorsing a complement not only helps that complement itself, it can turn it essentially into a blockbuster, and it creates more sales for the product and the platform as a whole. Aggressive pricing and marketing. Aggressive pricing, an example of that is the razor and blade strategy. That is pricing the product low in order to stimulate demand and then pricing the complements that go with that product higher. An example of this is HP printers and HP cartridges. HP printers are sold at a relatively lower price point to draw a customer in, and then the HP ink cartridges are then sold at a higher price point. It stimulates demand because the printers themselves are sold lower. However, the only ink that an HP printer will take is an HP ink cartridge, so then the customer is then obligated to buy the ink cartridge that is sold at a higher price point. The term actually comes from the Gillette Razor Company. They operate on the same basis. Their razors are sold at a relatively lower price point, and then the replacement razors are then sold at a higher price. There's aggressive marketing as well. So that is your direct upfront marketing and point of sale promotion. It is marketing such as HP printers with HP computers. You are bundling or you're throwing out incentives, being aggressive in that marketing platform. Cooperate with competitors and license the format. Creating incompatible technology is confusing and aggravating for the consumers. Back in the 90s, Sony and Philips were creating CD players, but what they didn't do was they didn't create CD discs that were compatible among the different players. For example, a Sony CD disc could not be played in a Philips CD player. So this created a little bit of confusion and aggravation, and also drove the demand down for the CD players. So then there's licensing. Licensing a format also allows other companies to produce the product that you have. So the company who created the format receives licensing fees when other entities or companies agree to sell as well. What this does is it creates a higher demand for the product, and an example of that would be the VHS format for the VCR. Other companies that were selling VHS, such as Sony, agreed to JVC's license so they too could sell VHS tapes. Cost in high technology industries. In most high-tech industries, the norm is to have a high fixed cost and low production cost. An example of this is Microsoft. Microsoft created Windows Vista, and that platform itself was approximately $5 billion. However, when they were adding another copy of Windows Vista, the price was next to nothing. The same goes for the prescription drug industry. Creating a new prescription drug can cost upwards of $1.5 billion. However, once that drug is created, creating one single pill thereafter only costs a few cents. There is a downside, however. If a product is sold in stores, the marginal cost will rise because of packaging and distributing cost. Comparative cost economics. The law of diminishing returns. What that says is marginal costs rise when a company expands the output. So marginal cost increases when extra resources used aren't being productive. The law of diminishing returns doesn't usually exist in high-tech settings. The two graphs there at the bottom, the company on the right is a high-tech company. As you can see, as average costs decline, marginal costs stay at a constant rate. However, in the low-tech company, the graph on the left side, as your costs kind of drive up, your marginal costs drive up as well. Strategic significance. Profits will increase when fixed costs are high, but marginal costs are low. An example of this is the music recording industry. Back in the 90s, they had analog technology, and that allowed marginal costs to rise because output was rising as well. That was the law of diminishing returns. However, when digital systems were then created, your marginal costs were lower because you could produce more copies of recordings at the same time. That resulted in lower prices, an increase in demand, and also eventually an increase in profits. In today's society, we have internet downloads. That creates an even lower marginal cost. That also leads to things such as illegal file sharing, and then ultimately you have a decrease in the recording music industry's revenue as a whole. Capturing first mover advantage. A first mover is a firm that pioneers a particular product category or feature. They're the first ones into the market. High technology industries, they strive to be the first mover when they're developing new products. It puts them in a monopoly position and they can control the market. However, imitators will try to flood that market and compete for profits earned unless strong barriers are there to make sure that doesn't happen. So if strong barriers are there, first movers actually have a competitive advantage that reduces imitation rates. First mover advantages. There are 5 primary advantages to being the first mover in a market. Number 1 is you get to exploit the network effects and positive feedback groups. Number 2 is you create brand loyalty. Usually that is expensive for movers that move in thereafter. So in doing so, the company name can become the key name associated with the product market. For example, FedEx, when they created their overnight packaging, most people ran around using the term, "I'll FedEx it to you." So FedEx became brand loyal to overnight packaging and distributing. Number 3 is an increased sales volume. So you're gaining cost advantages. You can cut prices when new entrants come into the market, and you can keep that competitive advantage to yourself. You can also create switching costs for customers, so that reduces when new entrants come into the market, that reduces them leaving your company and moving on to another one by initiating those costs. Number 5 is gaining knowledge in regards to customer needs, distribution channels, product technology, and as well as process technology. First mover disadvantages. There are also disadvantages to being the first mover in a market. One of those disadvantages is taking on the initial pioneer cost. So what that is producing the product, marketing the product, and then any other costs that are associated with actually getting that product out there to market. Another disadvantage is higher chance of making a mistake in a new market. So the second movers that come into a market can see those mistakes, then go to their product, reevaluate, and bring a new product out on the market that may be a little different or at a different price point. There's also a risk of acquiring wrong resources. So that could be that you're focusing on a wrong customer base and rather than looking at the entire market as a whole. And lastly, there's the risk of investing in an obsolete technology or object. Maybe it's a fad, maybe it's popular right now, but that doesn't mean that it's going to stay popular a year from now. Strategies for exploiting first mover advantages. There are 3 main strategies for that exploitation. The first one is the development and marketing of innovation. Secondly, you want to do that marketing and developing jointly with other companies, whether that's through strategic alliance or joint venture. And then lastly, you want to license the innovation to others and allow them to help develop the market as well. There's also complementary assets, so that helps you gain the competitive advantage. You can do that through marketing know-how, having access to the distribution systems, and then after-sales service and support network. There's also barriers to imitation. That's allowing an innovator time to establish a competitive advantage. And lastly, there's capable competitors. These are companies that can move quickly and can actually imitate the pioneering company. First mover advantages. A first mover is a firm that pioneers a particular product category or feature by being first to offer it in the market. There are high technology industries that strive to be the first mover when they develop new products, which puts them in a monopoly position. Imitators, however, will try to flood the first mover's market, competing for profits earned if strong barriers are not there in place. First movers can have a competitive advantage, which also reduces imitation rates.
Inversely, there are also first mover disadvantages as well. These are competitive disadvantages associated with being the first to market. First movers bear significant pioneering costs that later entrants do not. These costs include pioneering the technology, developing the distribution channels, and educating customers about the product. First movers are also much more likely to make mistakes in a new market with so many uncertainties. Later entrants have the ability to learn from the first movers' mistakes. First movers are also at risk of building the wrong resources and capabilities because customers that are early adopters may not necessarily represent a mass market. First movers also run the risk of investing in inferior or obsolete technology when its product is based on rapidly evolving technology. First movers must determine which strategy is necessary to capitalize on first mover advantages to gain long-term competitive advantages in the market. There are 3 basic strategies to accomplish this. The first is for the company to develop and market the innovation itself. The second is for the company to develop and market the innovation along with other companies through partnerships or strategic alliances. And the third is for the company to license the innovation to another company and allow them to bear the cost of developing and marketing the innovation. There are 3 questions that a company needs to consider before choosing its strategy to capitalize on first mover advantages. First, does the innovating company have the complementary assets available to exploit its innovation and capture the first mover advantages? Second, how difficult is it for imitators to copy the company's innovation? And finally, are there capable competitors that can quickly copy the innovation? Complementary assets are assets that a company uses to exploit a new innovation to gain first-mover advantages. These assets can be competitive manufacturing facilities, including the ability to increase capacity to meet increasing demand, marketing know-how, an adequate sales force, access to distribution systems, and an after-sales service and support network are all assets that can help a company achieve first-mover advantages. Height of barriers to imitation are factors that prevent rivals from imitating a company's distinctive competencies and innovations. These barriers give competitors time to establish competitive advantages. Patents are a widely used method of creating barriers to imitation. However, these can be, and have been in the past, easily worked around. Capability of competitors is the ability of a competitor to imitate the pioneering company and depends on two primary factors: research and development skills and complementary assets. Research and development skills will help in reverse engineering a pioneering company's product to quickly develop a comparable product, and the more access to complementary assets a competitor has, the easier its entry into the market will be. The way in which the previous three factors influence innovation strategies is listed in Table 7.1. When the pioneering company has access to complementary assets, barriers to entry are high, and there are few capable competitors, it makes sense to develop and market the innovation on its own. When the pioneering company does not have access to complementary assets, barriers to entry are high, and there are only a moderate number of capable competitors, it makes sense for a company to enter into a strategic alliance to develop and market the innovation. Lastly, it may make sense for a pioneering company to license the innovation if it does not have access to complementary assets, barriers to entry are low, and there are many capable competitors. Technological paradigm shifts are shifts in technologies that revolutionize the structure of the industry, dramatically alter the nature of competition, and require companies to adopt new strategies in order to survive. They are much more likely to occur in an industry when the established technology is mature and approaching or at its natural limit, and/or a new disruptive technology has entered the marketplace. The natural limit of technology is the relationship between the performance of a technology and time. Figure 7.7 charts this relationship in what is known as the technology S-curve.